Hi, I'm Jason Tetlow, the founder of the law firm Tetlow Law PC. Welcome to the Steel City and Conemaugh Valley Law Advocate podcast. I've been helping clients with personal injury and medical malpractice claims since 2001. I created this podcast to provide an overview of the personal injury and medical malpractice processes and answer the questions I most often get when I first meet with prospective clients. My goal is to fight for my clients so they are fairly compensated when they are the victims of negligent actions or malpractice. If you need representation or just have questions, don't hesitate to contact me at 412-248-9600 or visit our firm website at www.tetlowlaw.com. That's TETLOWLAW.com. Any information provided in this podcast should not be taken or relied upon as legal advice. You should always consult with an attorney about the particular facts and issues of your case.
Welcome to the Steel City and Conemaugh Valley Law Advocate, a podcast dedicated to bringing you legal insights on personal injury and medical malpractice law. Brought to you by Tetlow Law PC and featuring the expertise of Jason Tetlow. Let's get this episode started.
Welcome, everyone, to Steel City and Conemaugh Valley Law Advocate, your trusted legal voice for plaintiffs' personal injury and medical malpractice law in Western Pennsylvania. We're here on episode 6 talking about referral cases. Jason Tetlow is with us again, and he's going to be talking about lawyers who typically refer cases to him in his specialty areas that may not practice with that. And, so if you're an attorney who's ever encountered a client who needs help with a personal injury or medical malpractice case, but you're not sure where you should be sending them, I'm here to tell you that Jason is somebody you should be considering. If you've listened to any of these prior episodes, you know that he knows what he's talking about. And you know that these cases are complex. They require the right level of expertise to handle the claims properly, maximize the value that your clients are going to see. But we thought this would be a good chance for Jason to talk about how a referral program typically works with him, give some examples of other clients that he's worked with, and talk through that a little bit. So Jason, welcome back to episode 6.
Thanks, Pete. Good to see you today.
Same. So Jason, I know you've developed a referral network over the years with multiple cases, both in referring cases to them and accepting cases referred to you. And I think what we really want to focus on our attention today is, why would an attorney consider referring a case to you? And, one of the important things I think we talked about early on in episode 1 was that you've certainly planted your flag in Western Pennsylvania with offices in Pittsburgh and also in the Johnstown area, which Cambria County. And you've built up a understanding of the locality of both of these places and across Western PA, but you know that a lot of the judges, the court systems, the other attorneys in the area, and the healthcare systems and things like that I think really come to bear with understanding, hey, which cases have the best chance of success? When are you getting a lawyer on the other side that's really going to fight you? Or what are judges going to listen to, not listen to in their various courtrooms? So I think all that comes to bear for somebody considering why would they, send something to you over somebody else. But can we talk about that first as a general question? Why should an attorney consider referring their medical malpractice or personal injury cases to you?
Generally, Pete, there's certain circumstances where somebody just doesn't practice personal injury, medical malpractice cases at all. Maybe it's somebody that handles family law matters or strictly workers' compensation type cases. There's many lawyers that I've developed relationships with over the years, where if they do get a call on a personal injury case or medical malpractice case, I'm fortunate that they will refer me those clients. And on the other side, if I get calls like for estate work, it seems like recently I've gotten a lot of calls, people looking for wills done, powers of attorney and what have you. I don't do that kind of work. So I will refer that to a lawyer who has that specialty. So a lot of it's just specialty driven. Kind of the way the practice of law has gone is kind of similar to how medicine has gone. Everyone is very specialized anymore. My grandfather, God rest his soul, was a general surgeon in Pittsburgh, and he used to do all different kinds of surgeries. But that doesn't happen anymore. You're generally pretty specialized. So it's kind of the way it is with law. Lawyers handle estate cases, or they might handle family law or criminal defense. So those are the typical situation is, lawyers that I've developed relationships with over the years that just don't do the same kind of work that I do. And they'll refer me cases, refer clients to me, which, is always very appreciative.
Well, and I know this in particular because we've discussed it in prior episodes, but the process, we'll use medical malpractice as an example because they tend to be maybe a little more complex in this way, but the process for you determining whether a case has enough facts behind it, damages all the elements necessary to move it forward, you really have to be cautious about which ones you take, because I would guess, and maybe you can confirm this, that it would not be unusual for a medical malpractice case to have tens of thousands of dollars in expenses by the time you're taking it to the trial, before you even have any trial expenses that you have to cover before there's ever any recovery. And if somebody's in a practice where they're not used to an outlay of that much money and understanding the expertise that's necessary and how to choose to properly determine which cases are worth the investment, the time, and the recommendations to their client, that they could get themselves in some trouble if they try to do that individually. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, in general, yes. And there are lawyers that I have, referral relationships with that they do handle personal injury cases. They'll handle a lot of motor vehicle accident. They'll handle the slip and falls, but they just don't want to get involved in the medical malpractice cases, for the reasons that you said before. I mean, they're time consuming and they're costly. Understandably, some lawyers don't want to take on that time commitment, and they don't want to take on the risk of, outlaying the money that's required. So, there's a lot of circumstances where, there's lawyers that, fortunately will, refer me cases. And, in Pennsylvania, the nice thing is that, when somebody does refer me a case and we're successful, then I'm paying a referral fee to that lawyer. And that's common practice in Pennsylvania. That referral fee, it can vary based upon the relationship, the case. Again, a lot of it's case specific, fact specific. On the flip side of that is we talked in an earlier episode about workers' compensation. And, there's lawyers really that just specialize in workers' compensation. So, when I get a call on a workers' compensation case, and if that's all it is a workers' comp case, I'm going to refer that client, or caller, I should say at that time, to a lawyer that has that specialty.
And, you mentioned that, you have Pennsylvania permits it and it's common practice to have lawyers refer cases to each other. And there's a fee sharing agreement, arrangement, whatever it might be, a referral fee for bringing that case to somebody. Does that lawyer have to sign up that case before they bring it to you in order to be eligible for a referral fee?
No, they do not. In most circumstances, the referring lawyer is providing, that prospective client with my information. And a lot of times the referring lawyer will give me a heads up. Hey, I gave your name and number to so-and-so. They're going to call you. They have a medical malpractice type case to discuss. So no, they don't have to. I mean, it certainly has happened where they have had that client sign a fee agreement. And usually when that happens, then if it gets referred to me and, we accept the case and we move forward, then, I have that client sign, a separate fee agreement with my firm and explain to the client that, hey, you're being referred to me. At the end of the day, if we're successful, then, there will be a referral fee paid to the other lawyer. It's not an add-on fee to the client. It's just out of whatever the gross fees are, part of that's going to be paid as a referral fee to the referring lawyer.
My guess is that a lot of lawyers sign them up because they want to have the paper trail, make sure that they have the ability to show that they had a connection to this case to collect a referral fee down the line. And I think I would imagine a lot of this comes down to a trust factor. And if you have lawyers who are just referring people to you and giving you the heads up, hey, I'm sending somebody your way, and they know you're not going to try to backdoor them and take this case and not pay them a referral fee. That shows a high level of trust. And from someone who wants to build a referral network, it would be against your interests to start biting the hand that feeds you.
Right. That's exactly right. I mean, if I'm cutting referring lawyers out of their fees, then they're not going to be sending me any more work. So it's certainly, I look at it as a ethical obligation to make sure that if we are successful in a case, that the referring lawyer is going to get their referral fee that we've agreed upon. Sometimes referring lawyers will do some of the legwork. They will get the medical records. So sometimes I get a referral and some of that is already done. And it's a matter of us just then doing our review on our end of, the records that are available. It depends on the lawyer. Some lawyers like to kind of work it up a little bit initially and then, refer it to me. Or sometimes it's really just the initial phone call that they take and say, hey, call Jason and run this scenario by him and see if it's something that, his firm is worth interested in looking into further.
And do you ever come up against the question of somebody says, well, I know in particular in Pittsburgh, but certainly I think Cambria County and some of these other counties are seeing the same thing. We're starting to see national plaintiffs firms make their presence known. Philadelphia law firms coming into Western PA that weren't here several years ago. So you got some of these bigger plaintiffs firms. Do you come up against people saying, well, why wouldn't I refer it to one of these big plaintiffs firms? Why should I consider you over them? Do you get that question? And if so, what's your answer?
That's a good question, Pete. And I'm not sure. I mean, nothing comes to mind as far as people asking me that. However, with that being said, I think we do have an advantage here because we're not a volume shop. And, when we get involved in a case, we had talked about this on a previous episode. We're hands-on, the lawyers, myself and the one other lawyer that's here, we are hands-on with our clients. And sometimes when you get into the bigger national type firms that are now coming in, a lot of times I'm not saying you're just a number, but you're not really communicating or dealing with the lawyer. You're dealing with paralegal and secretary. And again, not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just, I view us as being more of a boutique, hands-on type firm, a little bit old school in that regard. But that's the way I like it to be. And I think that provides the client with the best service. I really do.
Well, and I'm sure you've experienced this. And again, you've illustrated this through some of our prior discussions that a lot of these clients are in a really rough spot in their life. They're at an emotional period. They've suffered through sometimes tragedy or physical ailments, whatever. So just being able to put them in a process is only part of the equation. They need somebody to talk to. They need somebody to tell them, here's what's happening. Here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to tackle this so that they feel that there's some control in an uncontrollable situation.
Yeah, that's true. And, what's nice about a lot of referring lawyers that I have is I'll go to their office and, the client will be there. And maybe it's a client that referring lawyer has represented in a different matter, so they feel comfortable with that lawyer. And then that lawyer is bringing me in. So I feel fortunate in those circumstances where that lawyer is putting the trust in me to coming in to meet with a client that they're familiar with. It's nice to have those relationships with other lawyers and that they put their trust in me to handle cases that, are important to their clients that they've had for other reasons. And again, I've been fortunate to build up good relationships with lawyers and some lawyers on the other side, some defense lawyers that are on the opposite side handling cases for insurance companies will refer me cases. And so there's all different kinds of scenarios and relationships. Some big local firms that refer me work, which is great. So it's all different kinds of relationships that has been built up over the years.
And I think I mentioned it at the beginning of this episode, but I'd like you to expand upon it a little bit more that, again, maybe a differentiator between a firm like yours and somebody who's very large or out of the area is your familiarity with the people, the courts, the hospital systems, the localities, all those different things that you're going to be coming across. I would think that has a real advantage in a lot of situations to have that knowledge behind you.
Yeah, I think it's always good to have the local knowledge. If you're a national firm coming in and, you're opening up an office and, you're not as familiar with the court personnel, the judge on the case, not that they can't handle it, but sometimes having that local knowledge is extremely helpful. I think clients having a lawyer local to Pittsburgh, local to Western Pennsylvania, having an office in the Johnstown area, being in Cambria County a lot, being in Somerset a lot, it's all very helpful. And not just those counties that I mentioned, but all counties around Pittsburgh. I mean, I have a couple cases now, like in Beaver County, I have one in Crawford County. So, there's all different counties in the Western Pennsylvania region. And I think having that local knowledge, having that local presence, in the courthouse is important.
Yeah, I would agree. And also knowing defense counsel, because at the end of the day, you hope you can pick up the phone if there's a chance of resolving the case and having meaningful conversation. And sometimes that's difficult to do if it's become so adversarial that there isn't any relationship there.
Yeah, that's true. In the medical malpractice, world that we live in, you see a lot of times you see the same lawyers over and over. So, you are building up those relationships and, hopefully some goodwill on cases and, acting professional, as opposed to sometimes, you do get some national out of towners coming in and not handling cases the way we would on a local level here.
Well, or I think oftentimes I've seen this myself in, the litigation space, is that expectations about what a case is worth or the realism of what you're possibly going to get in that jurisdiction is very different from when they're coming from to where you are. And sometimes that doesn't play well with a local jury or a local judge or even, a mediator if they just don't have a feel for, what that jurisdiction is all about.
Yeah, right. If they're used to being in a jurisdiction where maybe there's very high dollar awards from jury verdicts, but that maybe not necessarily the case in certain counties in this region, then you're right. They might come in with their chest out and, I want all this money. And, maybe if a case is trying to get resolved, the judge may look at them and say, well, what do you, this in this county, you're not going to see that. Sometimes you will. It depends. It's all case specific. But again, that gets back to having more of the local knowledge and understanding value of cases in this region. I think is extremely important.
And I think that would likely be very important in your setting expectations with the client at the beginning and saying, look, let's not get ahead of ourselves and be cautious about what's realistic or can be expected where we are with what we have. And obviously, you're always going to go after the best award, best result for your client. But, again, the realities of what you might get in a big city versus in Cambria County could be very different.
Yeah, client expectation is really key. And that's driven from the beginning of the case. And if you do have somebody coming in that's not as familiar with this region, then, that could be damaging. You get somebody that thinks their case is worth, up here, but it's really worth here. That can make it tough. So getting the client expectations in check right away, again, that's having the local knowledge in that regard is extremely helpful.
So if somebody out there is considering referring a case to you, they haven't worked with you before, they don't know you, would you suggest they call you just to have an initial conversation so you can introduce yourself, talk about your background, how this all works and the rest of it? Or what would be the first step for them of considering referring a case to you?
I'm a big fan of just picking up the phone and talking, right? So just pick up the phone, call. We can talk about the other lawyer's practice, as well. What's their specialty? Maybe I can, reciprocate on the referrals. But yeah, to me, picking up the phone, talking, maybe grabbing a lunch, what have you, I think that's really important. And I'm always open to, having those new relationships. It's all part of the practice. I'm going to be practicing here for several more years. So the more relationships, the better.
Yeah, you got kids in college. You're stuck for a while. So Jason, assuming somebody refers a case to you, how do you communicate with them about what's going on? Is it driven by how much they want to know, don't want to know? How do you take the lead of letting them know what's happening throughout the life cycle of the case?
Yeah, again, case specific, lawyer specific. I mean, there's some lawyers that I know want to be up every month, send them an update. Hey, this is what's happening. Some lawyers I may not hear from, or I might not get in touch with them for a period of time just because the case is ongoing and we're working on a case. And if I get it resolved and then let them know that it resolved and they're happy to receive a referral fee from a successful outcome, then great. So it just all depends. I mean, there's no like set structure to it. With some lawyers, it's more reporting back to them more frequently because I know that's what is liked. And with other lawyers, it's, hey, let me know when you can. And so.
Well, and I'm sure you've come across the situation where you've called somebody up and you say, hey, I have a referral check for you and X amount. Where do you want it sent? And they're like, I forgot about that case. And,
right. That's always
a pleasant conversation to have.
That's always the good scenario.
Well, I know, speaking from my perspective of operating in the litigation space in Western Pennsylvania and Pennsylvania as a whole for a long time at this point, that Jason has a solid reputation. He's good at what he does. He's very trustworthy. And if it's a practice area that you don't do, if it's something that you're considering looking to build a referral relationship both ways and meeting some other good talented attorneys that are out there, he's somebody you should pick up the phone and call. And whether you have a case today or you just want to have somebody in your back pocket for when the right case comes along, you should certainly reach out to Jason and do that. So Jason, why don't we do this? As we exit episode 6, what's the best way for a referral attorney to get in touch with you?
So just my work number, 412-248-9600. That's the best way to get a hold of me. Email jason@tetlowlaw.com. Give a call, shoot a message. And thanks for the kind words, by the way. That was very nice of you.
No, I meant it. So as we wrap up episode 6 here in season 1, any other parting words for your fellow counselors out there who are fighting the good fight and might be looking to establish a relationship with you?
I'm always open to discussions and always very thankful for any referrals that come my way.
Well, Jason, thank you. That wraps up episode 6 in season 1 of your podcast. We appreciate everybody who's listened to any of these. Hopefully we will be continuing to add content in the future here and finding more questions to answer, interesting areas to talk about. But we appreciate everybody's time. And Jason, thank you.
Thank you, Pete.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Steel City and Conemaugh Valley Law Advocate, brought to you by Tetlow Law PC. If you're in need of legal representation, visit tetlowlaw.com today to connect with our team. We look forward to helping you win your case, and we'll see you on the next episode.